My name is Elias Thorne, or at least that's the name I chose when everything started falling apart. Before that, I was simply Jacob, a boy born in the shadows of a community that called itself the Eternal Light. We lived in a remote corner of what the outside world calls the United Territories, a vast country of endless coasts, gleaming cities, and forgotten deserts. To us, though, it was simply the kingdom, an isolated paradise where the leader guided us toward salvation. I was born there, on a communal farm in the hills of what used to be called Idaho, but for us it had no name beyond blessed land. My parents raised me under strict teachings, absolute obedience, isolation from the sinful world, and blind faith that the apocalypse was coming soon, and only we would survive. From childhood, life in the sect was an endless cycle of dawn prayers, field work until dusk, and nighttime gatherings where the leader, a tall, charismatic man named Elijah Voss, preached about invisible demons lurking in the cities. "The outside is poison," he would say, his voice booming like thunder through the barn we used as a temple. "There, souls are lost to greed and lust. Here, we are purified." I believed it, or at least I pretended to. But as I grew older, doubts seeped in like water through a crack. I saw women forced into early marriages, children punished for innocent questions, and dissenters vanishing into the night, supposedly sent on divine missions from which they never returned. I was 18 when I decided I couldn't take it anymore. It happened after my older sister, Sarah, tried to run away. They caught her at the compound's edge, dragged her back, and subjected her to a purification ritual that left scars on her soul and body. Elijah married her off to one of his loyal followers, a man twice her age, and I swore the same fate would never happen to me. But escaping wasn't just walking into the woods. It meant erasing who I was, because the sect had eyes everywhere. They had infiltrated nearby towns, bribed local officials, and even had contacts inside government agencies of the United Territories. If I ran as Jacob, they'd find me in days. So I planned my forgery carefully over months. I stole documents from the leader's office, blank birth certificates, official seals they used for their divine transactions. I learned to forge signatures by practicing on scraps of paper I burned afterward. I used berry ink and homemade quills so there'd be no trace. I created a new me, Elias Thorne, born in a distant city called New Aurora, what maps call Seattle, an orphan whose non-existent parents died in a fictional car crash. I forged a birth certificate, invented a plausible social security number based on patterns I'd seen in smuggled books, and even altered a photo of myself, dyeing my hair darker with beet juice so it looked convincing. The night of the escape was pure terror. I slipped out during a storm, climbing the electrified fence with stolen leather gloves. I ran through the forest for hours, heart pounding like a war drum, until I reached a back road. I hitchhiked to the nearest small town, a dusty place called Pine Ridge, and from there took a rusty gray bus heading east, crossing states I only knew from rumors. I arrived in the great city of Liberty Bay, what people call New York, a monster of steel and lights that terrified me at first. The noise, the crowds, the smells, everything was the poison Elijah had warned us about. To me, though, it was freedom. With my new identity, I got a job at a coffee shop, serving espressos to strangers who never asked about my past. I rented a tiny room in a crumbling building with creaking walls and shouting neighbors. I learned to navigate the world. I opened a bank account with my fake documents, got a driver's license after passing a written test I studied for in a public library. I enrolled in night classes at a community college, studying history and literature, devouring books about the United Territories that the sect had forbidden. For the first time, I learned about presidents, wars, and revolutions that had nothing to do with divine prophecies. Years passed. 2, to be exact. I graduated with a basic certificate in business administration and landed a job at an accounting firm in the heart of Liberty Bay. I met people, friends in noisy bars, a girlfriend named Mia with fiery red hair and a laugh that lit up the nights. I told her lies about my childhood in New Aurora, about parents who never existed. "You're mysterious," she'd say, kissing my forehead. I like that. I built a life brick by brick, but always with one eye on the shadows. I changed phones every 6 months, avoided posting photos online, even though the whole world seemed obsessed with them. and never went back west. I thought I'd made it. That Jacob was dead and Elias was real. But then, one autumn night, everything collapsed. I was walking home after dinner with Mia, the cool air biting my skin. Liberty Bay buzzed with life. Yellow taxis honking, street vendors shouting about hot dogs and pretzels. I cut through a dark alley to save time, a mistake I'll never make again. From the shadows stepped a familiar figure, my Uncle Abel, one of Elijah's enforcers. Tall, gray-bearded, eyes like knives. "Jacob," he whispered, his voice an echo of old prayers. "The leader sends his regards." My heart stopped. I tried to run, but he was fast. He grabbed my arm with iron strength. "Don't scream," he murmured, "or Mia suffers." How did he know about her? He dragged me to a black van parked at the end of the alley, where two more men waited, loyal sect members with the light tattoos on their forearms. They injected me with something, a sedative, I suppose, and the world went black. I woke up tied to a wooden chair in a remote cabin. I didn't know where, maybe in the Central Mountains, what people call the Rockies. The air smelled of pine and smoke. Elijah Voss sat in front of me, wearing that serene smile that hid poison. "Prodigal son," he said, leaning forward. "You have sinned against the family. You forged your soul, fled the kingdom. But the light always finds the lost." They interrogated me for days. They wanted to know how I forged the documents, who helped me, though no one had, and whether I'd spoken to authorities. I resisted at first, biting my tongue until it bled. But the pain, God, the pain. They used old methods, sleep deprivation, precise blows that left no visible marks, forced prayers until my voice cracked. Elijah spoke of redemption, of how I could return as an example, married to one of the loyal daughters, working the fields to atone. But in my mind, I was planning again. I watched their routines, guards changing every 6 hours, keys hanging on a wall hook. One night, I faked a collapse, screaming in agony. When a guard came close, I smashed him with the broken chair, stole his knife, and cut my ropes. I fled into the snowy forest with bullets whistling past me. I ran for what felt like hours until I reached an icy river. I swam across, the cold burning my lungs, and stumbled onto a road where a trucker picked me up, thinking I was a lost hiker. I returned to Liberty Bay, but nothing was the same. Mia was gone. The sect had taken her as bait to draw me out. I found a note in my apartment. "Come alone, or she dies." I knew it was a trap, but what choice did I have? I contacted a private detective I found in a classified ad, a tough guy named Harlan with veteran scars. I told him part of the truth. No mention of the forgeries, just the sect. He investigated, traced calls, checked security cameras. We discovered the sect's network was far bigger than I'd imagined. Properties across several states, funded by donations and shady businesses. Together we planned a rescue. Harlan had contacts in the Federal Investigation Agency, what they call the FBI in the territories, but we couldn't involve them without solid evidence, or we risked the sect melting back into the shadows. We drove west in his beat-up pickup, crossing endless prairies and dusty towns. On the way, I told him more. My childhood, the forgeries, the terror. He didn't judge. He just smoked cigarettes and said, "We all have demons, kid." We reached the compound under cover of night. It was bigger than I remembered. High fences, guard dogs, floodlights. Through binoculars we saw Mia in a shack, guarded by Abel. Harlan distracted the sentries with a simulated explosion, a homemade firecracker, while I slipped inside. I fought Abel in silence, his knife against mine, blood splashing the dirt. I won, barely, with a burning wound in my shoulder. I freed Mia, and we ran to Harlan's truck. But the sect pursued us, jeeps roaring down the road, bullets ricocheting off metal. Harlan drove like a demon, weaving through mountain curves. We called the federal agency from his satellite phone, giving them coordinates and evidence of kidnappings and abuse. Helicopters appeared at dawn, agents descending like avenging angels. They arrested Elijah and dozens of others, dismantling the sect piece by piece. Today, years later, I live in a coastal city called Pacific Haven, what people call Los Angeles. Mia and I are married. We have a son who plays on the beach without fear of shadows. My identity is legal now. I testified against the sect and received amnesty for the forgeries in exchange for information. But sometimes, at night, I dream of Elijah whispering, "The light will find you." I wake up sweating, checking the locks. Because I know not everyone was caught. Some loyalists escaped, lurking in the corners of the United Territories. This is my story, not just of escape, but of rebirth. I forged who I was to survive, but in the end, I found my true self in the fight. And if you're reading this, remember, sects like mine exist in the cracks of the world. Keep your eyes open. True light comes from within, not from a leader in the shadows. But it didn't end there. After the trial, which lasted months in a federal courthouse in the capital, Washington Apex, I became an unwilling activist. Journalists hunted me down, wanting interviews about the boy who escaped the eternal light. I turned most away, but agreed to one with a local news channel, just to warn others. I spoke about the warning signs: isolation, financial control, punishments disguised as love. Mia held my hand under the bright lights. Fame brought trouble, though. Anonymous letters arrived. "Traitor, purification is coming." My son, at 5 years old, started asking why Daddy always looks over his shoulder. We hired security and moved to a house with alarms and cameras. Harlan became a close friend. He came to dinners, telling stories from his army days, fighting in far-off wars of the territories. One day, while walking the beach with my family, I saw a man watching us. Gray beard, familiar eyes. It was one of the escapees, a distant cousin named Seth. I confronted him, but he fled. That night they tried to break into our house. I triggered the alarm, and police arrived in time. Seth was arrested and confessed that Elijah, from prison, still directed a remnant cell. That pushed me to write a book, Shadows of the Light, detailing everything, from my forgery to the rescue. It became a modest success and helped victims of other sections. I founded a nonprofit with the royalties, offering legal and psychological support. I traveled the territories, speaking at conferences from the Midwest plains to the urban jungles of the South. Mia and I had a second daughter, and life settled into a beautiful routine: pancake breakfasts, bike rides, movie nights. But the scars remain. In therapy, I sometimes relive the interrogations, the freezing river, the fear for Mia. I learned that escape isn't a single event, it's a daily battle. Today I look out at the ocean from my window, the sun setting in orange tones. I know the sect is broken, Elijah aging in a cell. But if they ever find me again, I'll be ready. Because I forged my identity once, and I'd do it 1,000 times more for this life I built.